All right, guys, welcome back to the channel, the show. We took a bit of an extended leave of absence for the holidays.
Yes, sir.
For the past 2 weeks, we were trying, well, maybe three. We were trying to get a show going, but it was entirely my fault. I've been working really late at night. It's like the most convenient time for me to work since my kid's asleep. So
Absolutely.
I would sleep. Sometimes it'd be dark when I woke up. But anyway, today I guess I'm mainly speaking to those watching on the archive video or the stream, but we're just gonna quickly discuss basically how detrimental promiscuity is, especially if you're already part of a family, if you already have kids, if you already have, especially if you're already supposed to be faithful to somebody. Like, I've never cheated. I don't know about Michael. I don't think he has. I know definitely hasn't since he's been married. But I've never done it, not once. So, I mean, I'm pretty old fashioned, but I'm not religious. But I mean, I'm not an atheist either. What is that? Is that you?
Oh yeah, that's me.
Oh, I'm like, damn, dude, you like beating pans on the counter or something? But anyway, I'm not like atheist or anything. I like the way Jordan Peterson put it. Actually, he says he doesn't say he's religious. He just says he behaves himself as if there is a God.
Absolutely.
So, and I mean, I believe there's definitely a creator. I don't feel like I just so happen to be born in the one spot that just so happens to have the correct religion. Because everywhere across the world, everyone believes that they just so happen to be born in the one place that has the correct religion. I'm just not. I don't dig it. I mean,
Right.
I respect it. I definitely respect the values and everything, and I respect people's beliefs. That by all means, but I just don't. I I feel like I want to research every single religion. And I feel like if you did that, if you research them all and then you take bits and pieces from each one, that seems like you'd probably get closer to actual, what's really going on. I don't think that the human mind can really even comprehend what's really going on. I don't think we're meant to. But anyway, we're going to take a look at a Jordan Peterson video on being a dad, how to be a good dad,
Yeah.
and then we'll dive into how that also involves being faithful, to your wife, the mother of your child, because you got to lead by example.
100%.
I mean, even if they're too young to understand, you would be surprised how much they do understand, even when they're young. So,
Agreed.
I'm gonna play it on. I got it on 1.5 right now, but if it sounds like too crazy, I'll tank it down to 1.25. But we're
Cool.
short on time today, so just hang in there with us.
Cool.
What you try to do when you raise children is that you try to do everything you can to impress upon them by imitation and by instruction and by love and by encouragement that they are crucial beings in the world whose ethical decisions play an important role in shaping the structure of reality itself, and that they have the moral responsibility to do that. And you get your ark in order, that's your family, let's say, so that when the storms come, you can stay above water for the 40 days of flooding, and you're capable of leading your people through the desert when the desert makes itself manifest, and you can escape from tyranny properly because you're wise enough to see it, and you take the full burden of being on yourself, all the suffering that's part and parcel of that. You accept that voluntarily, let's say, and you do everything you can to confront the malevolence that's part of you and that's part of the state and that's part of the world. And you make a garden around you. That's the paradise, a walled garden. It's a walled, well-watered place, so the forces of nature and society exist together in harmony, and you place your family in that so that they can live properly. It's not a good idea to overprotect your kids, because the snakes are going to come into the garden no matter what you do. And so then you, instead of trying to keep the damn snakes away,
I wanted to touch on that because that was something I was just really thinking a lot about earlier. Like, the things I was trying to think like back to when I was younger and like how my parents could have navigated my because I was so rebellious, you know, like how could they have navigated to instill discipline in me, you know, more effectively? Because I can already tell my kiddo is going to be exactly the same way. So I was really thinking about, you know, like he was just kind of touching on is I was thinking about the kids I went to school with, and I would think about like the really good kids, you know, like straight A students, and they never get in trouble, you know, and I would think about their parents and how they would be, you know, basically, and then you would have, you know, it would seem like they were so innocent, like they were kind of like not ignorant, but they were just. It seems like if they got themselves in, they would seem naive, I guess.
Right.
So I mean, it's like, how do you find that perfect middle ground where you're like your kids aren't being too innocent to where they're
Yeah.
naive,
Yeah.
and they're also susceptible to manipulation from their peers. But how do you also teach them? Because you're not going to control who they choose to surround themselves with. If you tell them not to hang out with somebody, it makes them want to do it all that more, especially boys.
Always.
So, I mean, how do we train them? How do we teach them to, you know, choose their peers wisely? Like how? I mean, because they especially a lot of kids. I know I did. They choose their friends when they're young,
Oh,
and I
definitely.
mean they'll stick with the same friends for years and years. And I mean, you'll have kids that they grew up with since kindergarten, and then if those kids choose to go surround themselves with other kids that are getting into trouble, then it's like a damn it transfers from the other kids that the friend is surrounded with and then into that friend and then over to your kid.
Yeah.
So it's really, I mean, it's it's pretty terrifying, really, and especially in this modern society where even the teachers are trying to teach kids to disobey, lie to their parents. You know, just even like not even the gender nonsense. It's just everything altogether. I mean, it seems like the teachers, at least the ones that we see and hear about all the time, why are they so young now? Like I remember my teachers, they were like 40s, you know, 50s, some of them in the 60s even. Like I don't
Yeah.
remember my teachers being old. I mean, just fucking college kids, dude. I just
Well,
don't understand it.
yeah, I think also you also got to talk about where perspective. You were an elementary kid whenever you were seeing these teachers. So um, I say that a lot of them really are young whenever you find them in the elementary classes. That's where they get their start. You got to start teaching somewhere.
Yeah,
But
but
I mean,
sorry.
I agree that they do seem to look like they're younger today, and I think they seem to look like they're younger because we're older. Quite
Well, I know
honestly.
I was trying to consider that as well, but I mean, even you know, I can remember my first grade teacher. She was definitely in her 40s at least. My second grade teacher, she was also already married, already had kids. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, she was past her 20s at the very least.
Right.
Now, that's not to say I didn't have any teachers that were in their 20s, but
Sure.
the youngest I can remember was maybe 26, 27. You know,
Right.
now it seems like we're seeing teachers that are 20, 23 years old, you know, 22 years old, but they behave like they're, you know, 14, 13 years old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a societal issue, um, because our society has become, completely, I guess, immature for lack of a better way to explain it. But I mean, all of our teachers.
Irresponsible.
Well, yes, certainly, but all of our teachers, whenever we were in school, I mean, they had to get their start somewhere at some time, so they were all young teachers at one point as well. So, I think what's happening is now that we have, so much social media, we see all the young, you know 21, 22, 23-year old teachers because they're on social media. The teachers that are actually focused on their job and not and not focus on themselves in social media, they're not posting. They're not putting stuff on social media. So you're seeing, well, unfortunately, with social media, we see the worst in society. So you can quickly and easily lose faith. I think there's more good people out there than bad still, although there's a lot of bad, and you've got to be able to navigate it, because unfortunately the bad is what is being broadcast, right? The good is hidden, so you have to go find it. You have to have the fortitude to do so.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always been, I mean, at least for the past 20 years, at the very least, the 5% or less, it's less than 5%, and they speak so loudly that it seems like it's making up 75, 80% of the
Sure.
population, so of course that's amplified by social media.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you've also got to think though their superiors are allowing that. So it's not just the teacher, it's the administrator, it's the staff, that their superiors, the principal, the teachers unions especially, man. Like I know around here that stuff is, at least from what I've been told by my friends who have kids that are older than mine, they say it's not like that here yet. Emphasize yet, because they are doing everything they can to spread it. And I watched something with Joe Rogan the other day where he was talking about uh old wrinkly ass Soros,
Yeah.
and how he's been to like multiple countries, and what he does is he goes and I don't know where he got his wealth from. He's had ridiculous amounts of money through nefarious activities, no doubt, but he's so freaking old now, dude. Like, I mean, he was doing this I think like in the 50s, 60s. Like, he's been to all these different countries, and he was just scaling up, like stepping up, larger and larger population, larger and larger governments, larger and larger countries. And I mean, basically, he would go in and turn the populations against each other and cause everything to collapse so that he could, basically build their utopia or whatever you want to call it, where
Sure.
it's everything based in communism, basically. And
Right.
it's so sickening that so many people don't understand this. I mean, it's right under their noses. He's been on mainstream media talking about it. I mean, and I mean, he doesn't really even, he's never even lied about it. Like,
Well, no.
he pays the media to do all of the lying. But
Well,
it's
you say, you don't know how people don't notice. They do notice. Unfortunately, we have a weak generation that is notice exactly what's going on. So when you have an entire generation, or maybe even two, arguably, that are very weak, that require or feel like they require or need a handout, then communism sounds awesome. So that's your problem. They don't. So that's why they don't have to hide it anymore. They just come out and say it because they have support now. So that's why it's so important. The topic of this show today was, is to raise the next generation properly.
exactly.
Because that, anyhow, that's why that's to comment on what you're saying. They don't hide it because they don't have to. They've got support because we've got a weak generation that feels like they need a handout, or not feels like it. They are owed a handout to them
I know.
in their mind.
I mean, I'm gonna say with like a few more things. I just wanted to get back to the video, but it's one thing my mom always told me all the time. I mean, from the time I was probably, because I got my first job, at least my first summer job. I was probably 11 or 12 years old,
Hmm.
and my mom always told me. She said, "The world does not owe you a living. You have to go and earn it yourself."
Yeah.
Right. So while I do want to build a business that I can leave to my son, when I'm not here anymore. So he does have something to fall back on. I also want him to learn to respect the value of creating value.
Yeah.
Like, you have to make yourself valuable, create value, and then that is how, like, just because you are here, that doesn't mean you get to be a burden on everybody else.
Right.
And this I don't know where it's coming from. Everybody thinks they are owed something, like they think they deserve whether it's reparations, whether it's my kid is not gonna, he's not gonna be talking about that, dude. He's gonna be like driven. I mean, I can't say, exact things never go the way you plan, but I can promise you he will be more disciplined than I was. And even I had the top freaking 5% of work ethic. I was at the very top at almost every job I've ever had because I've always been, whatever needs to be done, just get it done. And it's not, oh, that's not my job. I don't think I've ever said that.
Yeah.
And I will be damned if he's not going to be raised the same way. But we'll let Dr. Peterson talk some more.
With something that can help them chop them into pieces and make the world out of them. So that the trick for human thriving in the face of suffering and malevolence is strength, not protection. It's a completely different idea.
I just found out I'm having a girl. Congratulations. What can I do to raise her to think for herself and not fall into the modes of thinking proposed by popular culture? Well, you can let her think for herself when she's a kid. What you do is so that she practices doing that. And so that means to consciously encourage as much autonomy as possible. So how do you do that? Well, let's say she's a little kid, she's 3, and she starts to get interested in clothing. So you lay clothing out on the bed and you say, well, you can wear this or you can wear this. You let her make autonomous decisions. And with kids, you don't want to let them choose from an infinite menu. You want to give them a constrained menu. But what you want to do with your daughter is allow her to make as many decisions as she can possibly make as early as possible. And that doesn't mean that children always know what's best for themselves or any nonsense like that. It just means that you're going to encourage her autonomy in every measure that you can manage. And that means you're going to have to be brave and allow her to subject yourself to a certain number of risks. So you raise her to think for herself by letting her think for herself. And that can start quite early. I would say when she's a teenager, she's going to fall into the modes of thinking proposed by popular culture because that's part of being enculturated and socialized. It's virtually inevitable, and it's even somewhat desirable. But what you hope is that you've encouraged the capacity for autonomous thinking to a sufficient degree that it's likely to integrate with that more intense teenage socialization and then reemerge, so you get someone who comes out the other side as an autonomous individual. And that works with boys and girls. So I guess you do what Geppetto did in Pinocchio. Is the first thing you decide is, well, you don't want to raise a puppet. You want to raise an autonomous person. And then you think through, what does it mean to be an autonomous person? What sort of person do you want your child to be? What sort of person do you want to encourage your child to be? And then having established that vision in mind, that's going to guide your choices. But at least you're making the right choices. You don't want someone who's dependent and whiny and cringy and more frightened than they need to be and martyr-like and vengeful and malicious and manipulative and mendacious, all of those things. You want someone who can make their own judgments. And you can ask kids what they think pretty damn early. Like, you have to be careful and not push them beyond their capacity. But if you know your child, you'll be able to see what level of decision-making they're capable of engaging in. And
all right, I know my co-host is on a tight schedule, but yeah, I mean, dude, just the amount of wisdom this man has, it just
Absolutely
infuriates me when I see these people dragging him through the mud just because he says some things that are true that they cannot acknowledge. Like they're so out of touch that if they hear somebody acknowledge reality, they freak the fuck out, dude. They cannot even handle it. They lose their absolute mind.
right. Well, I mean, we live in a society now where we live in perpetual make-believe, so truth does hurt more in a society like that. I mean, so that's where that's coming from. So although it's annoying, I'm not surprised, right? That's where the shock has wore off. I'm completely jaded. I now understand the world I live in, quite unfortunately, and I understand that the world I live in is right now, unfortunately, being dictated by a bunch of people who think make-believe is perfectly fine. We have to act like men aren't men, women aren't women, vice versa, and we have to act like that all these pronouns that we have to not have to, but that we're compelled to use, and the way that we just live in this make-believe land that things are owed to us. They'll just be provided. Oh, the great government will just simply provide, and these laws will stop all crimes. And, and there's just so many things that we live that we live through in this society that are so silly and foolish, that is exactly why people like, Jordan Peterson, and even on a much smaller scale, myself and you, who sit here and just simply speak what used to be common sense, and it all of a sudden now it's compelling and riveting and mind-blowing. Like, wow, what a great thinker. Well, I'm no genius. I don't consider myself a great thinker.
No,
I
we're
consider
just
myself very
not
much,
afraid to speak our mind,
just
when so many people
I'm
are,
very
yeah.
common sense, but that it's no longer common. That is exactly why men like Jordan Peterson are drugged through the mud.
Well,
They hate them.
the thing is they're so coddled and so pampered. See, I mean,
Mhm.
Even 20, 30 years ago, it was, well, first of all, the population was lesser, but I mean, people still, they had to go bust their ass. Everybody had to get a job. I mean, even like middle class families would have to send their kids to work a part time job if they were in high school, college. I mean, people had to work. These kids that are spreading all that, they've never had to work. Even the ones who worked at Twitter, when Elon went in there and wiped them all out, that you would see their videos that they made. Oh, a day in the life as a Twitter employee or whatever, and they would
Yeah.
have a meeting, and then entire rest of the day they would be like in the lounge having a coffee and doing just nothing, absolutely nothing at all. They have never had to work. So I mean, when you grow up like splitting wood to keep warm and having to mow the yard, just I mean basic tasks that every kid should have chores. I mean,
Yeah.
these kids have been coddled so much that
Yeah.
it's just they truly believe that the world owes them. Like they don't see the world as, oh, well, think about even just a few hundred years ago, if not thousands of years ago, what people had to do to survive. They had to go out and scavenge, or like go out and forage, or they had to go hunt. That every day, every single day to eat, they would have to go out and spend hours and hours being able to make sure that they could feed themselves, and that included the kids. Even like 4 or 5 year old kids, they were having to go out and pick berries and find apples and shit. And and now we are so overly comforted, and commodities are such, I mean, they're commonality. Everybody takes them for granted
Yeah.
nowadays, that people don't see how much work that other people have put in order for them, just for them to have that.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, and I just really want to. What's up, Chris? I appreciate you coming through, man. But we're about to have to stop. I'm gonna put the link to this video in the description, though, as soon as we end the stream. So
Cool.
if you guys want to check out the full video, it'll be there. But yeah, if you want to go back and check out the entire video, our stream, it's only like 23 minutes. I'm gonna come through and add chapters shortly. So yeah, we basically just went over how we can prevent society's downfall.
Yeah.
Since the modern woke and radical left seem absolutely determined to uh, not reproduce, they don't want to reproduce.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they'll just all die out in the next 50 years or so. So if we can raise our children to be, independent thinkers and people with common sense, I mean, it's inevitable that we will outlive them. That's what I think, anyway.
Well, it's going to have to. The thing is that's why it's so very important that we do raise the future generations much better, because they're going to be required. And it's not. I'm not trying to speak like we're old in and used up and done, and we can't do a thing about society, because we have a major role to play in the society. We have the role of leadership and the role of raising the next generation, right? So that's just as important as being the generation that comes through and actually helps society get back on the straight and narrow. So I mean, we certainly still have a major role to play, and I think I feel blessed, and I'm grateful that I'm a part of the generation that I am a part of, because it raised strong people, in my opinion. I
We were
think
the
the vast
last.
majority of us we're not pushovers. We weren't overly pampered. We're not overly privileged. Of course, I do realize the blessing of being a United States citizen. I do realize the blessing and the privilege I have to be born in this country. But just as a whole, I think that we're a very strong generation, and it's going to require hard work from us to pull us out of the hole. We've got a completely useless generation, arguably two, that we have to outlive and hopefully progress past them.
You know, when they're taking all these hormones that don't belong in their body, and you know they get cancer, and they're all morbidly obese, and I mean it shouldn't take that long. Hell, we may even outlive them, especially and our kids are definitely going to. You know, all of our kids are going to be fit. They're not going to be morbidly obese and sitting on the couch fucking 20. Well, hell, all week.
Well,
much less 24
at the
hours
very
a day.
least, they're not going to celebrate it, right? So I can't guarantee anything that someone's going to, my kids are going to be fit and not obese. But what I can guarantee is that they're going to be self-aware, right? And they're not going to become victims, and they're not going to blame everybody, or they're not going to force someone to love them at any size or shape and then be deluded enough to think that they're healthy. So there's many things that come with, raising the next generation appropriately, but it's simply broken down to truth and facts, and stop living in fairy tale land.
Well, yeah, I meant like barring any unexpected, like I would think, even if they're not going to the gym every day, we're not going to feed our kids to an extent that they become morbidly obese. At least not once they're 18. I mean, obviously, hopefully our work has, we'll never be done being a dad, but
of course not.
Hopefully we'll feel confident when they, if they, I plan to teach my son to invest in, business ventures, and only if he wants to be like a doctor or something that absolutely requires a college degree will I encourage him to go to college, because I see it as a waste of money. Brittany's going because she has, she's going to be a pharmacy tech or a lab tech, and she has to have that degree or the certification. But for me, I used to think that I even went to college for a while because I thought that I had to have a business degree to have a business or to run a business. And while it may have helped a little bit, and I definitely would have been connected, with other business people, it really doesn't matter. All you got to have is money. You got to have capital, and you can have a business. So, I plan to not only leave him with a business, but to teach him how to build his own.
Certainly.
But it's that was another thing my mom always told me, was to always take responsibility for the situation you're in, even if it isn't your fault, which most of the time it is. The choices you make one way or another led you to where you're at.
Agreed.
Whether it's just a tree randomly falls and smashes your car, like, not really your fault, but if you really think about it, you parked your car there. Could have parked somewhere else, So
circumstance.
Just don't be a victim was the moral of the, of the statement. Just take it. And Dr. Peterson says all the time, that he takes as much responsibility as he can without basically wanting to unalive himself.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, Chris had a chat He just said that he had that debate with his daughter the other day, and she essentially does not believe in truth or natural law. And man, I would I don't know how old she is. I'm assuming she's probably like a preteen or something like that. But I would honestly make her learn a hard lesson. I mean, the older they get, the more difficult it is for them to learn things like that because they become more and more rebellious. The earlier you teach them a hard lesson, the better. I mean, and you can make that her being Amish for 6 months. That seems like something I would do, where I would just take everything, and she would have a bedroom and books, and I would probably have a lot of Dr. Peterson's books in there.
Sure.
But, yeah, that's just what I'm. Oh, she's 11, so yeah, she's almost a preteen. Yeah, yeah, dude, that's like prime age. Like I mean, because another 3 years, you let that go, dude, it's gonna be hell on earth
Yeah.
for you and her both, and her
for sure.
mother. But yeah, I'm sorry for keeping you too long, Michael. I mean, we always get off talking and we can't stop.
Oh man, yeah, it's a good time though.
But as I said, dude, I appreciate everybody for stopping through on live and on the playback. Like I said, I will leave the link to that video down in the description if you guys want to check it out. It's very, I mean, in 1 minute of listening to Dr. Peterson talk, it's just like you got to stop and just absorb it. You got to take it in freaking intervals because he's so damn intelligent and has so much experience as a psychiatrist. He's got 40 years of experience in the field, so he's seen and worked and helped people helped so many different types of people improve their own situations and improve their own mental health that it's just ridiculous. He's got a wealth of wisdom, and he's, as he said in that interview, that one of his most famous interviews, he wants to be remembered as somebody who was honest.
Yeah.
She asked him, what was the one thing you wanted to be remembered as? And he said, somebody honest. And I just find that I respect the hell out of him, dude. I got a lot of respect for him.
Absolutely.
Well, all right, guys. Y'all have a great weekend. Don't be partying too hard. And if you do, call a driver. Don't drive.
I love it. Yeah, man. I want to thank Chris for popping this show on today for everybody, whether you're on playback or live. I appreciate everybody showing up. But thank you, Chris, for making this happen to kick us off for 2023, man. The first Fit Dads Live show. And, man, we're ready for a lot more.
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, we'll keep them coming. I was working way too much, but I think my business is finally good now, and I don't have to work so damn. I was working till the sun come up a lot of nights, so.
I hear you.
It's just so much easier to work when the kid's asleep.
I know, man.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all later.
Hey, thanks a lot, man.
You too, bro.